The shadow in the attic. The full story of Hinterkaifeck. The wind that blows across the Bavarian plains in winter carries with it a particular kind of silence. It is a silence born of isolation, of vast stretches of farmland where the nearest neighbor is a mile away, and where the secrets of a household stay locked behind heavy wooden doors. In 1922, this silence settled over a small farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck. To the outside world, it was just another working farm. But inside, a psychological drama was unfolding that would culminate in the most baffling cold case in history. This is not merely a chronicle of a tragic event. It is a journey into the heart of human fear. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the intruder, and the terrifying realization that you can be watched in your own home for days without ever knowing it. To understand the horror of Hinterkaifeck, we must first understand the Gruber family. Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, was a man carved from the harsh earth he farmed at 63. He was known as a difficult, often aggressive man, feared rather than respected by the village of Kiev. He lived with his wife, Cecilia, their widowed daughter, Victoria, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. The family was wealthy by local standards, but they lived a life of extreme austerity and social isolation. There were whispers in the village about the nature of their relationships, dark rumors that added to the family's seclusion. They were a closed circle, a fortress of secrets, which made them the perfect victims for a predator who understood the power of silence. The mystery did not begin with an act of violence, but with a series of anomalies that should have been warnings. In the late autumn of 1821, the family's maid suddenly quit. She fled the farm in a state of absolute terror, claiming that the house was haunted. She told anyone who would listen that she heard constant footsteps in the attic, that she felt eyes upon her when she was alone, and that the very walls seemed to breathe. Andreas Gruber, a pragmatic and cynical man, laughed at her superstitions. He believed in the physical world, in the soil, the cattle, and the hard work of the farm. He did not believe in ghosts. For 6 months, the family lived without a maid, until a new one was scheduled to arrive on the final day of March. As the winter of 1822 began to thaw, the ghosts became physical. One morning, after a fresh snowfall, Andreas discovered a trail of footprints. They began at the edge of the dark forest that bordered the property and led directly to the farmhouse. He followed them with growing unease, expecting to find a traveler or a thief. But when he reached the door, the trail ended. There were no footprints leading away. No one had left the house. Andreas searched every room, every barn, and every corner of the cellar, but he found no one. He checked the locks, which were all intact. The realization began to dawn on him. Someone was inside, or they had vanished into the air. Over the next few days, the anomalies escalated into a psychological siege. Andreas found a newspaper on his porch, an edition from Munich that he had never subscribed to. He asked the postman and his neighbors, but no one had left it. Later, he discovered deep scratches on the lock of the tool shed, as if someone had tried to pick it with a crude instrument. Then, the keys to the house, a heavy set of iron keys, vanished entirely. Despite these escalating signs of an intruder, Andreas never went to the police. Perhaps it was his pride, or perhaps it was the fear that the authorities would look too closely at the internal secrets of the Gruber family. He chose to face the shadow alone. The final day of March 1922 was a day of transition. The new maid, Maria Baumgartner, arrived at the farm in the late afternoon. She was young, hopeful, and unaware of the history of the house. She was shown to her room, the same room the previous maid had fled. At the same time, the silence of the farm was about to become absolute. We can only imagine the atmosphere at dinner that night, the tension of a family that knew something was wrong. The sound of the wind rattling the shutters, and the unseen presence in the attic watching through the cracks in the floorboards. What happened next is reconstructed from the cold evidence found days later. It appears the guest used a lure. One by one, the family members were drawn out of the warmth of the house and into the cold darkness of the barn. Perhaps it was a noise, a disturbed animal, or a flickering light. First, Andreas, then the elder Cecilia, followed by Victoria and the young Cecilia. They were led to their end in the silence of the stable, away from the ears of the new maid and the sleeping infant. The precision of the act suggests someone who knew the layout of the farm perfectly, someone who had timed the movements of the family with the patience of a hunter. But the most disturbing part of the Hinterkaifeck story is not the night of the event. It is what happened during the following 4 days. To the rest of the world, Hinterkaifeck remained a functioning farm. On Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, neighbors saw smoke rising from the chimney. They saw the cattle being fed in the yards. They saw a soft light moving in the kitchen windows at night. The mailman continued to drop off the daily papers, and he noticed that the previous day's mail had been collected. On Sunday, the family was absent from church, which was unusual, but neighbors assumed they were ill. Inside the house, the intruder was making himself at home. He cooked meals in the kitchen, using the family's supplies. He slept in their beds. He tended to the animals with meticulous care, ensuring the cows were milked and the horses fed. He was not a thief. He left the gold coins and jewelry untouched on the dresser. He was something else. A man who wanted to step into the life of another. A man who enjoyed the domesticity of a home he had just destroyed. He lived with the family he had silenced for nearly 100 hours. A phantom master of a dead estate. The discovery was made on Tuesday, April 4, when a repairman arrived to fix a machine. He spent hours working on the farm, noticed the eerie silence, but saw that the chimney was smoking. When the family still didn't appear, he alerted the neighbors. When they finally broke down the door, they found a house that looked perfectly normal except for the absence of life. The search eventually led them to the barn, where the horror was revealed. The investigation that followed was a masterpiece of failure. The villagers, driven by curiosity and shock, trampled the crime scene, destroying footprints and evidence. The police, overwhelmed by the brutality and the lack of a clear motive, struggled to find a starting point. The list of suspects grew to over 100 names. Some believed it was Lorenz Schlittenborg, a local man who had a complicated relationship with Victoria and was the first to discover the bodies. Others believed it was Victoria's husband, Karl Gabriel, who was reported killed in the trenches of World War I, but whose body was never found. Rumors spread that he had returned from the war, found his family changed, and taken a dark revenge. There were theories about vagrants, vengeful former employees, and even supernatural entities. But for every suspect, there was an alibi or a lack of physical evidence. As the years turned into decades, the farmhouse at Hinterkaifeck was demolished. The land was leveled, and a small shrine was built. But the demolition of the stone did not lead to the demolition of the mystery. In 2007, a group of modern forensic students re-examined the case using modern technology. While they claimed to have identified a primary suspect through behavioral profiling, they chose not to release the name out of respect for living descendants. They concluded that the invisible guest was someone the family likely knew, or someone who had been living in their shadows for far longer than just a few days. Hinterkaifeck remains a symbol of the ultimate violation of the home. It is a story that taps into our most primal fears, that our sanctuary is not as secure as we believe, and that someone could be watching us from the darkness of our own attics, waiting for the perfect moment to step into our lives. As the Bavarian snow continues to fall each year over the site where the farm once stood, the secrets of the Gruber family remain locked in the frozen earth. The guest who stayed for dinner, who fed the cattle, and who lived in the silence of a dead house, has become a ghost in the annals of Krima shadow that will never truly be brought into the light.